The markets of Zereth Prime never slept, even under a blood-red sky. The noise of chains and shouting merchants filled the air. Among the hundreds of cages, a young alien girl named Solara Vane waited, her wrists bound by glowing cuffs, her pale lavender skin bruised from the long transport. Her golden eyes did not cry, they only burned with quiet shame. Solara had been born to a noble house on the moon Virion, but when her father's debts grew too heavy, he made a choice no father should. He sold his daughter, not to strangers, but to a blood trader who specialized in rare gene signatures. Solara's blood carried something valuable, a link to an ancient technology buried in the ruins of her homeworld. And so she was branded, labeled, and shipped to the slave pits of Zereth. The crowd that gathered around her cage was loud and cruel. Some laughed, others made offers. Their voices like buzzing insects. A merchant shouted, "Pure Virion stock, strong veins, perfect for breeding or testing." Solara gripped the bars and looked up, refusing to hide her face. If this was her end, she would at least face it standing. Then the noise changed. From the back of the crowd, a man stepped forward, a human, tall, scarred, wearing an old pilot jacket faded by war. His name was Captain Marcus High. Once a soldier of the Terran Defense Fleet, now a wanderer who carried too many ghosts. He had come to the market searching for spare ship parts, not a person. But when he saw her eyes, that mixture of pride and pain, he stopped. The auctioneer laughed when Marcus raised his hand. "A human buying a slave from Virion? You must have a death wish, Terran." Marcus said nothing, his eyes fixed on Solara. "How much?" he asked, voice calm. 2,000 credits, the merchant smirked. "But for you, maybe 3. Marcus transferred the credits without blinking. The gate opened with a hiss, and the slaver tossed Solara forward like broken cargo. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground, his hand steady and warm. For a moment, their eyes met, hers full of distrust, his full of something else. Something she didn't recognize. He didn't speak. He simply guided her out of the pit, past the staring crowd, past the laughter, past the memory of being sold by blood. Outside, the air was cold, the twin suns sinking behind the metallic skyline. Marcus led her to his ship, a worn freighter called the Iron Nomad, patched with rust and old earth markings. Solara hesitated at the ramp. "If you're going to hurt me, get it over with," she said softly. Marcus looked at her, tired eyes beneath the scars. "I didn't buy you to own you." She didn't believe him. But something in his voice made her step inside anyway. The ship hummed to life, engines growling like old beasts. Marcus handed her a blanket and a bowl of warm food. She stared at it as if it were poison, then slowly took a bite. The taste made her eyes sting, not because of spice, but because it was the first kindness she'd felt in years. Marcus didn't ask questions. He just sat across from her, repairing a small drone with practiced hands. The silence between them was heavy, but not cruel. Later that night, Solara crept from her bunk. She found him asleep in the pilot chair, an old photo of Earth glowing faintly beside him. A planet full of blue oceans and green forests. A world she thought existed only in stories. For the first time, she wondered what kind of man would cross galaxies to save a stranger, and why his eyes looked sad when he thought no one was watching. The next morning, the Nomad drifted through the dark between stars. Solara watched the swirling colors of hyperspace through the glass. Freedom felt strange, like a dream she did not deserve. She touched the glowing cuffs still on her wrists and whispered, "You should have left me." Marcus turned from the cockpit and said, "Yeah, maybe," and smiled faintly. "But I didn't." She turned away before he could see her face, afraid her eyes might give away the storm inside. Far behind them, in the slaver's den, her name was already being traced. The blood traders had realized what they had lost, a living key to an ancient weapon. Bounty hunters were dispatched, carrying her DNA as a signal. The hunt for the Virian key had begun. And though neither Solara nor Marcus knew it yet, their act of mercy had just set fire to half the galaxy. The Iron Nomad vanished into the dark. A small human ship, carrying one broken girl and one tired man, two souls marked by loss, tied together by something stronger than fate, a choice made in the light of compassion. And as the stars stretched around them, Solara whispered to herself, sold by blood, but not forever. Somewhere in her heart, the chains began to crack. The ship drifted through the dark sea of stars. Inside the Iron Nomad, the lights were dim and the air smelled of oil and metal. Solara sat quietly in the corner, wrapped in the blanket Marcus had given her. Her wrists still glowed faintly from the cuffs, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her that freedom was not real. Marcus worked at the console, his hands steady, his voice silent. He did not ask her questions. He did not demand thanks. He just flew the ship with calm focus. Like a man who had nothing left to lose, Solara watched him for hours, trying to understand this human who had bought her, but refused to treat her like a slave. When he offered food, she refused. When he offered water, she hesitated. But when the engines roared and turbulence shook the cabin, she grabbed his arm without thinking. He didn't pull away. He only said softly, "You're safe now." Those two words echoed in her mind, louder than the engines. That night, Marcus noticed her shivering in her sleep. He placed his old jacket over her and went back to the cockpit. The jacket smelled like dust and rain, strange, comforting things she had never known. In her dreams, she saw the auction stage again, her family turning away, the crowd laughing. But when she woke up, the sound she heard was different, humming. Marcus was fixing the reactor, singing an earth song under his breath. The melody was soft, full of sadness and peace. She didn't understand the words, but she felt them. The kind of song sung by someone who had seen too much death, but still hoped for life, for the first time. Solara smiled, just a small, secret smile no one saw. Days passed quietly. Solara began to walk around the ship, exploring narrow corridors lined with faded earth flags and pictures of oceans. She found one photograph of a group of soldiers standing beside Marcus, all smiling. He was younger there, no scars, eyes full of fire. But the others were gone, names scratched out one by one. She realized he had lost more than she could imagine. One evening, the ship suddenly shook. Alarms flashing red, Marcus shouted, "Hold on," and pulled the ship into a dive. Through the viewport, a pirate frigate appeared, its hull marked with slaver symbols. They had tracked Solara's genetic signal. She froze, memories flooding back. The cages, the laughter, the chains, but Marcus stood firm, eyes cold as iron. He fired back with the Nomad's cannons, even as explosions lit the void around them. The pirates boarded through the rear hatch, metal boots echoing through the corridor. Marcus grabbed his old rifle and shouted, "Stay behind me." Blaster fire tore through the walls, sparks raining like stars. Solara saw one pirate aim at Marcus's back. Without thinking, she screamed. He turned just in time to block the shot. The plasma burned across his shoulder. He fell, gritting his teeth, but still fired until the last pirate hit the floor. When silence returned, smoke filled the cabin. Solara rushed to him, her hands shaking. "You're hurt," he smiled weakly. "I've been worse." She pressed her palms over the wound, tears mixing with the blood. "Why did you do that?" she asked, voice trembling. He looked at her with tired eyes. "Because no one did it for me," her breath caught. Those words pierced deeper than the pain in her heart. No one had ever protected her, Not family. Not friends, no one. But this human, this stranger, had faced death without hesitation. Something inside her broke and healed at the same time. She stayed by his side while he slept, cleaning the wound, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Every time he groaned, she whispered softly, "You're safe now," repeating his own words back to him. When he woke, he found her sitting nearby, holding a cup of water. "You should rest," she said quietly. He smiled. Didn't know aliens could be this bossy. She almost laughed. And for the first time, it felt good. Days later, the wound began to heal, and the distance between them grew smaller. Solara started helping with ship repairs, carrying tools, watching the stars beside him. They didn't talk much, but when they did, their words carried weight. She told him about her world, the gardens, the silver trees, the lies her family told. He told her about Earth, the smell of rain, the taste of coffee, the blue sky that stretched forever. Their stories met somewhere in the quiet between the stars. One night, she said softly, "You should have left me there." Marcus looked at her. "Maybe, but I couldn't." "Why?" she asked. "Because when I saw you, I saw someone who hadn't given up," he said. She looked away, feeling her heart tremble. "You're a strange human," he smiled faintly. "Been told that before," as the ship drifted toward an uncharted system. Solara touched her wrist. The glowing cuffs still bound her. But this time, she didn't see them as symbols of slavery. She saw them as the last pieces of a life she would soon leave behind. She whispered to herself, "Chains can break," and deep down, she knew Marcus Hawley had already begun to break them. Outside, the stars burned bright. Inside, two broken souls sat in silence, one healing from scars of war, the other learning what kindness truly meant. Neither knew what waited ahead, but both felt, for the first time, that they weren't alone anymore. The Iron Nomad floated in silence near a dying star. Marcus sat at the console, scanning the navigation logs, while Solara cleaned the floor behind him. Days had passed since the pirate attack, yet the tension still hung heavy in the air. She had saved his life, and he had saved hers. But neither spoke of it. Some things didn't need words. Marcus checked the radar, and a red symbol appeared, a signal. Faint but repeating, he frowned, tapping the controls. "It's a tracking code," he murmured. Solara froze. "From the pirates?" "No," Marcus said slowly. "This one's encrypted. Something old. Military grade." Her heart pounded as he played the signal's frequency. It pulsed in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Solara stepped closer, eyes wide. "That's not a pirate code. That's mine." Marcus turned sharply. "Yours?" She nodded, trembling. "It's my blood signature." He didn't understand at first, until she explained. Every noble from Virion was born with encoded DNA linked to their ancient vaults. Her blood wasn't just royal. It was a key, long ago. Her ancestors had created weapons hidden in the Ecliptor vault, devices that could erase entire colonies. When her family went bankrupt, they sold that secret to the Empire. But the Empire needed her blood alive to unlock it. She was never sold for her beauty. She was sold for her genes. Marcus leaned back, his jaw tight. "So they're still after you," he said. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Not until they open the vault." Silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the engines. Finally, Marcus said, "Then we'll make sure they never find it." Solara stared at him, shocked. "You don't understand. The Ecliptor can destroy worlds." "I've seen worse," he replied calmly. "And I've stopped worse." His voice carried the weight of a soldier who had already fought too many hopeless wars. For the first time, she realized Marcus wasn't just kind. He was dangerous when it mattered. Later, while he slept in the cockpit, Solara studied the holomap. It showed the coordinates of her homeworld, Virion Prime. Still under Empire control, her hands shook as she traced the blue light, remembering the gardens, the laughter, the betrayal. Her brother's face appeared in her memory, the moment he handed her to the slavers. He had called it saving the family, but now she understood. He had sold her to buy power. Her blood had become his ticket to the Emperor's favor. The next morning, Marcus caught her staring at the map. "You're thinking of going back," he said quietly. "I can't run forever," she replied. "If they have my blood, they'll unlock the vault and kill millions." He stood and crossed his arms. "Then we stopped them, but not without a plan. They worked together for days." Marcus modified the Nomad scanners to detect gene trackers, while Solara studied old Virion codes stored in her memory. Their bond grew stronger, not romantic yet, but full of quiet trust. She began calling him Captain, half as respect, half as comfort. He started calling her Kid, though she was far from one. And every night, when she sat beside him watching the stars, the silence between them felt like safety. But safety never lasted long. A week later, the radar flared red again. This time, multiple ships, Imperial interceptors closing in fast. Marcus cursed under his breath. "They found us." "How?" She gasped. "They must have locked on to the blood signal before we blocked it," he said. "Hold tight," the Iron Nomad roared to life. Spinning through an asteroid field, plasma beams flashing past the hull. Solara gripped the seat, heart racing. "They'll destroy us." "Not if I destroy them first," Marcus growled. Slamming the throttle, the ship ducked behind a massive asteroid, then reappeared, firing its twin cannons. One interceptor exploded, scattering fire into the void, but another clipped their wing. Alarms screamed, metal tearing apart. "Brace!" Marcus shouted. The Nomad spiraled, crashing onto a frozen moon below. Snow exploding on impact, silence followed, broken only by the groan of damaged metal. Solara crawled from the wreckage, coughing. "Marcus?" He emerged, blood on his forehead, smiling faintly. "Still alive?" she almost cried. But instead she laughed, shaking her head. "You humans are insane," he smirked. "We prefer stubborn," before they could recover. A projection flickered in the air. Her brother's face, broadcast from an orbiting cruiser. "Solara?" His voice echoed cold and hollow. "You should not have run. The Empire needs you." Her fists clenched. "You sold me." "You don't get to call me sister." He smiled cruelly. "I sold a key, not a person. Your blood belongs to us." The transmission ended. Leaving her shaking with rage, Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll make him regret that." She looked up at him, eyes bright with tears. "Why are you helping me, Captain?" He hesitated, then said, "Because no one should be owned by their blood." Those words burned into her heart like fire. That night, as the wind howled across the frozen plains, Solara sat beside the damaged ship, watching the stars. She remembered how humans were once called monsters, destroyers, bringers of war. But the only human she knew had given her something no one else had: choice. And in the dark, she whispered to herself, "Maybe that's what love really means," inside the ship. Marcus looked out through the cracked glass. He saw her sitting alone, her hair glowing faintly under the twin moons. He didn't say it out loud, but he already knew. He would die before letting the Empire touch her again. Because somewhere between battle and blood, between chains and kindness, she had become his reason to fight again. The stars above flickered like distant fires, and the war for Solara's blood was only beginning. The Iron Nomad floated above the frozen moon, its engines coughing with every pulse. Marcus worked tirelessly under the open sky. His breath fogging in the cold, Solara stood nearby, watching him through the glow of the repair lights. each time he got shocked by a loose wire. He cursed softly, and she couldn't help but smile. Even in pain, this human refused to give up when the engines finally roared to life. Marcus leaned back against the hull, exhausted. Where to now? He asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Solara hesitated, her golden eyes reflecting the twin moons. Zereth Prime, she said quietly. He froze. You're serious? They're using my blood signal from there, she explained. If I don't stop them, they'll open the vault. He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. Then we finish this. The journey to Zereth was silent. Stars stretched into streaks of light, and the hum of the ship felt like a heartbeat between them. Marcus sat at the controls, his face hard and unreadable. Solara stood behind him, staring at the endless black, remembering the day she was sold. She could still hear the laughter, the whip, the shame. But now she wasn't that girl anymore. She was someone who had learned what strength truly meant. When the Iron Nomad entered Zereth's orbit, the planet glowed with its usual filth and neon haze. Slaver lights shimmered across the city, and smoke coiled from the pits where lives were traded. Marcus tightened his gloves. Home sweet home, he said dryly. Solara's heart pounded. This is where it began. He looked at her. Then this is where it ends. They landed near the outskirts, disguising the ship among broken freighters. Solara covered her head with a hood, hiding the faint glow of her skin. The stench of oil, blood, and rust filled the air. Every step brought back memories she wanted to forget. The chains, the auctioneer's grin, her brother's cold eyes. Marcus walked beside her, hand never far from his weapon. He didn't say it, but he was ready to kill anyone who tried to touch her again. In the shadows of the old slave pits, a figure waited, her brother, Vareen, dressed in noble armor and arrogance. Solara, he greeted with a fake smile. You look well for someone who should have died. Her voice shook with anger. You betrayed me. I saved our house, he replied coldly. Your blood bought our survival. You call this survival? She hissed. You sold your own sister. Varen's smile faded. You always were dramatic. Marcus stepped forward. You should walk away, friend. Marine glanced at him with disgust. A human? That's who you run to? He smirked. Didn't know my sister had fallen so low. Marcus didn't flinch. Funny. I was about to say the same about you. Before Solara could answer, soldiers appeared from the shadows, armored. Armed, surrounding them, Varen's voice echoed. You'll come with us, Solara. The Empire awaits its key. She raised her chin. If I go with you, millions will die. That's not my concern, he said. You were born to serve your bloodline. Marcus's jaw tightened. And I was born to break chains. Blaster fire erupted. Marcus pulled Solara behind cover, returning fire with perfect aim. Explosions tore through the market, smoke and dust swallowing the night. Solara's cuffs glowed faintly, reacting to her rising emotion. One shot grazed Marcus's arm, but he kept firing. Refusing to fall, Vareen shouted, She's mine, and charged forward, blade drawn. Solara stepped into his path, unarmed but fearless. You sold me, she said, voice shaking. But you'll never own me again. The cuffs on her wrists sparked, then shattered into light. The ground trembled as the mark in her blood responded. The vault's ancient signal awakened beneath Zereth, rumbling like thunder through the planet's core. Vareen stumbled back in fear. What did you do? Solara's eyes glowed bright gold. I took back what was mine. The energy rose like a storm, cutting through the city and reaching into the sky. Marcus ran to her side. Solara, you have to control it. I can't. She gasped. It's too strong. He grabbed her shoulders, steady and firm. Then we'll face it together. The vault's light burst across the horizon, throwing soldiers and slavers into chaos. Ships fell from the sky. Power grids failed, and the city burned. Varine tried to escape, shouting orders that no one heard. Solara raised her hand, tears streaming down her face. No more slaves. No more blood. The light engulfed her. Marcus held her close, whispering, "You're not alone, Solara." When the light faded, the pits of Zereth were gone, replaced by a field of white ash and silence. Solara collapsed, weak but alive, her eyes dimming. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground. "It's over," he whispered. She looked up at him, voice trembling. "You should have let me die." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Not a chance, and for the first time in years." She cried, not from pain, but from release, above them. The vault's light drifted into the stars like falling snow. The Empire's ships scattered. The signal broken, Zereth Prime, the world built on slavery, had fallen by the hands of one alien girl and one stubborn human. Marcus lifted her gently and carried her back to the ship. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled weakly. "We did it," as the iron nomad rose through the smoke and into the sky. Solara looked down at the ruins and whispered, "No one will ever be sold again." The stars opened above them like a promise. But Marcus knew the story wasn't over yet. The vault was awake. The Empire would not stay silent. And the girl once sold by blood had now become a symbol, a spark that could set the whole galaxy free. The iron nomad drifted through the endless dark. Inside the ship, silence filled the corridors, broken only by the hum of weak engines. Solara lay on the medical bed, her skin pale, her pulse fading. The energy she released on Zereth had burned through her veins like fire. Leaving her fragile and weak, Marcus sat beside her, his face tired, his hands stained with grease and blood. He had patched every wound, fixed every circuit, and fought every enemy. But now he faced something he couldn't fight, losing her. "You should rest," she whispered softly. Her voice barely audible. Marcus shook his head. "Not until you do," she smiled faintly. "Always stubborn?" He grinned a little. "Part of the charm. For a moment." They both laughed, a sound that didn't belong in a galaxy full of pain. Outside, the stars shimmered, distant and cold. Marcus stared at them, thinking of Earth, the oceans, the rain, the people he had lost. He had sworn never to care again, never to get close to anyone. But Solara had changed that. She had walked into his broken life and reminded him what it meant to be human. Hours passed. Then the ship's console beeped, a weak signal pulsing through the static. Solara stirred. "What is it?" Marcus leaned forward, reading the data. "It's a distress beacon," she frowned. "From where?" He looked closer. "From Virion." "You're home." Her eyes widened. "The vault's power. It spread?" He nodded slowly. "It's calling, maybe for you." Solara tried to sit up, but her body trembled. "You can't go," Marcus said gently. "You're not strong enough." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "If I don't, more people will die." He sighed, knowing he couldn't stop her. "Then I'm coming with you." When they reached Virion Prime, the planet shimmered under a golden storm. Lightning danced across the sky as if the world itself was alive. At the center of the storm stood the Ecliptor Vault. Glowing brighter than before, Solara felt her blood react, her veins pulsing with light. "It's calling to me," she whispered. Marcus grabbed her hand. "Then we go together." They stepped onto the platform before the vault, wind whipping around them. The ancient doors opened with a deep metallic roar. Inside, the chamber glowed with living energy, swirling rivers of light flowing through glass-like walls. Solara walked slowly, her fingers tracing the symbols of her ancestors. "This is what they killed for," she said bitterly. Marcus looked around. "It's beautiful and terrifying." At the center of the room, a pillar rose, pure crystal, humming with power. As she approached, it reacted to her heartbeat. The ground shook, lights flaring bright. A holographic voice echoed through the chamber. Ancient and cold. Virian blood detected. Vault activation sequence commencing. Marcus shouted, "Solara, it's draining you." She winced in pain, energy surging through her. It's too late to stop it. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her. The energy hit them both, their bodies glowing under the blinding light. She screamed, "You'll die." He whispered, "Not today." He placed his hand on the crystal, channeling the overload into himself. The vault shuddered. Lights flickering, systems collapsing. Solara cried out, "Why are you doing this?" He smiled, his voice calm even as his body burned. "Because you taught me something, Solara. Humanity isn't blood, it's choice." The energy wave exploded outward, shaking the entire planet. From orbit, ships saw the golden light burst through the clouds like dawn. After endless night, when it faded, the vault was gone. And so was Marcus. Solara fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. The ground was quiet, the storm gone. She whispered his name, but only the wind answered. For a long time, she sat in silence, clutching the torn jacket he had left behind. The jacket that still smelled like oil, metal, and the man who saved her soul years past. The story of the human with a heart spread across systems. Slavers whispered his name in fear, rebels in hope. Solara rebuilt Virion into a free world, a place where no one was sold or owned. She became its leader, not by birthright, but by choice. And on every ship that entered her orbit, one law was written in bright letters. No chains, no masters, only freedom. Each night, she stood on the balcony of her citadel, looking toward the stars. And when the light from a passing comet streaked across the sky, she smiled, because deep inside, she knew he was still out there, somewhere among the stars, watching her, guiding her. The human who had once said, "No one should be owned by their blood." The human with a heart that changed the fate of worlds. The wind carried her final whisper across the night sky. "Thank you, Marcus Hale."